Hey everyone, my name is Sinead. Apa kabar? And in this video, I'm going to be talking about my language learning journey as someone who has had a very messy cultural upbringing. This video is in part inspired by Michella Zhang's video. I'll link it in the description. In this video, she talks about having to relearn Chinese as an American-born Chinese and the identity struggles that can come with that, and I very much related, so I'll leave the link in the description box below. So for a bit of backstory, my mom is white and was born in English-speaking Canada. Alternatively, my dad is Balinese and grew up in a rural fishing village in Bali. Bali being that tourist destination that you know about, which is inside the country of Indonesia. Indonesia is a country made up of thousands of different islands, and each island actually has its own native language, but the entire island is united together through everyone's ability to speak Indonesian. So most Indonesians grow up with two languages. They have their native language, Javanese, Balinese, Papuan, but then in schools everyone learns Indonesian. So for example, my dad grew up speaking Balinese in his home, but he learned Indonesian at school, and so he became like conversationally fluent in both. So I spent the first few years of my life in Jakarta, where my mom raised me with my dad. My mom mostly spoke English to me, whilst my dad spoke Indonesian to me. And because I was like in Jakarta and not in Bali, I basically heard no Balinese language at all. Like I was only ever exposed to Indonesian from my dad and the society around me, who was majority Indonesian. But then my mom got pregnant with my twin sisters, and then we moved to Canada for a bit so that she could give birth to them there so that they could get Canadian citizenships. And whilst I was there, I was only ever exposed to English, and so my brain just got really used to, as a child, to English. And so by the time we returned back to Indonesia, back to Jakarta, I couldn't understand my dad in the slightest. I had completely lost my ability to speak Indonesian. And it gets worse. Not long after that, my parents split up and my dad moves back to Bali. But we didn't move back to Canada. My mom actually stayed in Jakarta, where most people speak Indonesian. But she only ever talked to me in English. And so naturally, English just became my native language and my Indonesian just disappeared. However, I did learn some Indonesian though. So because we had like a nanny who took care of us whilst my mom was at work, she couldn't speak any English, and so she talked to us all in Indonesian. And so I learned like the basics of my Indonesian skills there. I was still hearing it every day. I could like talk to her in Indonesian, but it was always at a very basic, superficial level. So growing up, I was never really exposed to any like high-level Indonesian speaking. I was only really exposed to what I call kitchen Indonesian. That is, I only ever knew enough to like get around, ask for things, and engage in simple dialogue with people. Anything complicated, like, nah. And the reason why my Indonesian never developed, despite living in Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia where everyone speaks Indonesian, is essentially because I was basically echo chambered into this purely English-speaking environment, where Indonesian was never made a priority in my life. So my mom was a teacher working at an English-speaking international private school. This school pushed a very Western education, which, as you would expect, was conducted purely in English. Pretty much all of my teachers were white, the whole board was white, and all of my friends were mainly just other rich, privileged kids who could also speak English. And I don't know why, but like for some reason I was just only ever exposed to Western media. I only ever listened to things that were in English. And I didn't really have like an Indonesian speaking role model in my life. Everyone around me just happened to always speak English. All of my mom's friends spoke English. All of my friends' parents spoke English. And in addition to that, the level of exposure to Indonesian culture at my school was really token. And anything that they did was clearly just done to meet Indonesian government standards. Learning anything to do with Indonesian, whether that be the language, the culture, the history, was completely undervalued in my school as a primary school student, as everything that they taught us was very Eurocentric and westernized, which you would expect from an international private school, right? In history class, we never learned about Indonesian history. We learned mainly about Australian whitewashed history. In primary school, I only ever had one lesson a week of Indonesian lessons with a teacher which was just really bad at teaching the language. And the only time we celebrated Indonesian culture was once a year on Indonesian Independence Day. I'm not going to cry about my educational experience because I think it was good for the most part, but that was kind of annoying. And a lot of this is based off luck. Like I could have just found a friend who spoke Indonesian and I could have just learned from them, or I could have like, you know, been in some sort of environment where I was talking to people in Indonesian all the time, but that just didn't happen for me. Like I just completely missed out on that. My Indonesian was always pushed to the back burner, and not having that opportunity to develop that sense of the Indonesian language was really hard for me because I am Indonesian, like I'm half Indonesian. I grew up in the capital city of Indonesia, and I could only just barely get by with the language. I could understand a bit here and there, but in all honesty, my skill levels were still really weak. Then in high school, they decided to increase the amount of Indonesian lessons that we had. But this turned out to be a complete negative for me because I just got this teacher which I absolutely hated, and she just made learning the language terrible for me. But then in grade 10, I actually switched classes and moved into a class with the advanced kids. And that was really good for me. I had a really good teacher, and she actually started the itch to actually learn this language. And so yeah, I was learning, I was getting a bit better day by day, but I still had a lot of self-doubt in me. This was the thing with my Indonesian, right? I could understand most of what people are saying, and I could actually speak pretty well. I could get my point across. But when it came to reading, writing, and doing anything complex, that was kind of hard for me. But then in the last 2 years, if you guys know anything about me, I had to do the IB. And essentially, because I wanted to get as high of a mark as possible, I essentially had to improve my Indonesian so that I could ace those exams, so I could get the highest mark possible. And those exams were tough. They included speaking, reading, and writing exams, and you had to write an assignment. At the beginning of the program, this terrified me. I did not think I could do it. And so I signed up to do some Indonesian lessons. And this was the time where I was super engineering focused. I was like, math, science, physics, I didn't care about languages as much. So I thought they were kind of useless and pointless and just distracting me from being able to focus on what I wanted to do, which was maths and science and stuff. But then I started to mature and realized how echo chambered I was in only being able to speak English. And I realized how much of my media that I consumed was pretty whitewashed, and I didn't consume as much media outside from American stuff. I just started to become more aware and interested in the value that can come from studying language and culture. And so yeah, at the beginning of my language learning classes, I had a lot of self-doubt. I didn't think I could do it because I never felt myself naturally good at wordy subjects. But this slowly started to change enough as I actually had this really amazing tutor. My tutor was able to turn language learning into a genuinely fun, amazing, identity shifting process. Because essentially what he would do is that he would work through material with us whilst also sharing hilarious stories along the way. We would be reading a passage on something and then just go on this long, hilarious side tangent about something else. And that just really helped improve my speaking abilities and my comprehension abilities. We would gossip, we would tell funny stories, so we would be learning, but we took it pretty chill, and that's what I liked. Another thing that helped me become hooked on the language learning thing was when I discovered Raditya Dika. Raditya Dika is this hilarious Indonesian stand-up comedian, and I would just watch his stuff on repeat to really try and drill the language into my head. YouTube videos, I would just consume all of his content, and I just learned so much vocabulary from listening to him. And another good thing about him is that he's very colloquial, he's just really casual, so I learned so much awesome Indonesian slang and slurs from him. And eventually over time I got better because I already had a lot of passive vocabulary in my head. I knew a lot of words, I just wasn't confident enough to use them while speaking, and through my lessons I developed this confidence to the point where I can pretty much speak my mind in Indonesian now. I can't go super deep, but I can go somewhere. One of the most profound moments that I had when I started learning Indonesian was when I went to Bali for the holidays once, and I could actually speak and have a genuine conversation with my grandparents. This was just the cherry on the top, best part about learning the language. Being able to finally speak with the people that you love is just on another level. When it came around to doing that exam, I completely smashed it. I think I got a 96%. It was my best exam out of all of the IBs. The best thing about learning the language was that I started to feel this sense of comfort living in Jakarta that I hadn't felt before, because now I knew the language. I could speak, I could debate, I could say things that I wanted to, and that really helped secure my Indonesian identity in a lot of ways, because when Indonesians look at me, they don't see me as an Indonesian, they just see me as a white person, honestly. They don't think I'm Indonesian. But then when I can speak Indonesian to them, it's almost as if my whiteness starts to fade away, and they can kind of finally accept me as Indonesian, as one with them. That's the amazing thing about language, is that it kind of transcends race. When you can speak to someone with their language, that's when they know. Coming out of school, I wanted to continue to improve my Indonesian language because I knew I'm still not fluent. I can't really write well, I can't really read either. Finishing school, I just started to read books in Indonesian using this app called Linq, which allowed me to look up any words that I didn't know and save them as phrases, which I could then use to make flashcards of them. I would highly recommend it if you're learning a language. Download Linq, get books, put them into Linq, and then just start reading. It's great. And that's where I am right now. In Michelle's video, she mentions the concept of heritage language. Heritage language refers to a language which one is taught in their home from their own culture and society, but then it is often like put aside in favor for like the majority language. And so that's what Indonesian feels like to me. It's not my native language, but it's not just like another language that I learned. It's like my heritage language, which to this day I'm just going to continue to improve. I'm going to continue to watch more things in Indonesian, listen to more podcasts in Indonesian, and read more books in Indonesian, because I just want that language to like improve over time, and also just because I don't want to lose that bit of my culture. So that's where I am with Indonesian at the moment. I can talk in Indonesian, I can understand you, I can watch all the TikTok videos in Indonesian that I want, I know what's happening, but I'm still not fluent, and I'm trying to get there just through doing a lot more reading. However, it is not all roses. Because yeah, whilst I'm very happy that I can learn Indo now and that I can speak Indonesian pretty well, my Balinese family doesn't speak Indonesian with each other. They speak Balinese. So yeah, after 2 years of learning Indonesian so that I could finally feel comfortable in the city of Jakarta, now I'm having to go through that whole process again with Balinese. I thought learning Indo was hard. Balinese is on another level. There's 3 different levels of Balinese and a whole new writing system. And so yeah, right now I'm in the process of improving my Balinese. It's not gonna happen anytime soon, but I'm willing to take it slow. But yeah, that's all I have for this video. If you've experienced a similar struggle, drop a comment in the comment bar below or message me on Instagram. I'd like to hear your thoughts. And yeah, that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching. Bye!